Hello everyone. So today I'm going to show you a very important attack called the Greek gift. This is an attack you absolutely need to know because it's very common, especially against less experienced players, and even intermediate players can fall for it as well. And what's interesting about this attack is that it can arise from several different openings. So first I'm going to show you the opening that has allowed me to win a lot of games thanks to this Greek gift attack. And then I'll show you other openings, other games, and other players where this attack has also occurred to show you that this theme is actually common to many possible openings. Now, I'm more of a queen pawn player myself, but we'll see that this attack can also happen in openings with the king pawn. So I play d4, d5, c4. And here, less experienced players sometimes defend the d5 pawn with the knight to f6. Actually, the best way to defend is with the c6 pawn or the d6 pawn. That way, if there's a capture, you recapture with a pawn. But if your opponent plays king versus f6, you take. If they recapture with the queen, you bring out your kv to chase their queen away. And later, you'll be able to play e4 to have the center. And if it's the kv that takes, then e4 right away. The kv can come to f6 to attack the e4 pawn. And here, I don't like to play e5 too quickly, because that gives back the square to the kd-d5. I prefer to keep this e5 push for a little later. And I often play kd-c3. You can also play bishop d3, a little trap. The queen no longer defends the d4 pawn. If the black queen takes, that allows you to play bishop b5 e-check and to win the black queen. But well, your slightly more experienced opponents won't fall for this trap, of course. But you can play knight c3, and here I see a lot of players with black play e6 and get ready to play bishop b4 to pin me and threaten to win my pawn. Now, I play bishop to d3. With this new trap, if he takes on d4, I play bishop b5 check and I take the queen. So obviously black won't take. They can play knight c6, but we defend with knight f3. And it's always the same. If black takes, we take back. And when black recaptures, bishop b5 once again wins the queen. So here, black sometimes plays against me. Bishop to b4, the pin, actually quite often. And I do kingside castling. And here, if black does kingside castling, and by imitation they often do, at least at less experienced levels, well, if black does kingside castling, they lose. Because the idea of having the bishop on d3 and the idea of keeping the pawn on e4 is to be able to launch the e5 push, chase away the black knight, open up the bishop's diagonal so it can sacrifice itself on h7, the Greek gift, like in the story, you know, during the siege of Troy, the city of Troy. There was this gift offered by the Greeks, the Trojan horse. It was a gift, of course, that caused the city to fall and allowed the Greeks to win the battle. And here, it's the same thing. After e5, the knight is driven away. We sacrifice the bishop on h7 to finally open up a breach. And if the king takes, then we'll have knight to g5 check, and the queen arrives on h5 with the decisive attack. We'll see it, by the way, and we'll look at all the variations. So this push to e5. Knight to d5, bishop takes h7, and here I know some of you are thinking, but what if the king doesn't take? So if the king doesn't take, and we'll see what happens if he does in a moment, if the king doesn't take, we play knight to g5, protected by the bishop, and we prepare for the queen's arrival on h5. If the queen is facing the king, you just need to move the bishop with check and put the queen on h7, which will result in checkmate. So black can play g6 to prevent the queen from coming to h5. But the queen will come to g4 to prepare, for example, to go to h4. King g7 to have the h8 square for the rook. And here we sacrifice. Knight takes f7 to remove the defense of the g6 pawn. If the king takes the bishop, black loses the queen. And after rook takes, queen takes g6 check. On king h8, we win the rook. And the attack will continue, especially with the arrival of the bishop. And on king f8, queen g8, check, king e7, bishop g5 check. We're attacking the king and the queen. Plus, if the king moves, we can even take the rook with check. Everything is winning now. So we understand that after the push to f5, knight d5, bishop takes h7, king h8 is not a solution for black. So they take on h7, knight g5, check. Let's see what happens if the king goes back to hide, and what would happen if the king comes out. But first, let's see if he goes back to hide. We bring the queen to h5 and threaten checkmate. What can black do? If they push the f-pawn, in any case, there will be queen h7 checkmate. The knight doesn't just support the queen, it also controls the f7 square. To avoid getting checkmated, black would definitely have to sacrifice the queen. But obviously the game is lost. If knight f6, we take the knight and still threaten checkmate. Black can try rook e8 to give their king an escape square. And here you shouldn't play queen h7 right away, because if you play queen h7, king f8, queen h8, the king escapes. And then queen takes g7, rook f8, comes to protect. But if the pawn in f7 was not there, it would be checkmate, this position. This is why, when black play rook e8, you must not come to h7 right away. You must first take in f7, force king to h8. And then we make him go for a little ride. Queen h5, check, he is forced to play g8. Queen h7, he is forced to go to f8. Queen h8, he is forced to go to e7. And queen takes g7. Checkmate, since the f7 pawn is no longer there. So in the position after e5, the knight moves. What we need to carry out the Greek gift attack is 7 pawn pushes to e5 to drive away the knight on f6. The bishop on the right square to sacrifice. And then the knight must be able to come to g5 without black being able to eliminate the knight. And here, black can't do it. Or, well, they can, but it costs them their queen. And then, the last point, you need the queen ready to come to h5. If the king moves to g6, note that, Sylvie, if he goes to h6, he puts himself in the bishop's sights. So knight takes f7 with double check and even a fork that wins the queen. So the king will tend to play to g6 instead. And that's where you have to be clever. A lot of people will play here. Queen to d3 check, or they'll put the queen on g4. It's not bad, but it's not the most effective. Look, after queen to d3 check, black can play f5, and after en passant, the king can come to f6. We could have knight to h7 for a fork, but let's not forget we've already sacrificed a piece. It's still advantageous for white, but less so than what we could get with a more subtle move. And what bothers me in this position is the presence of the rook on f8. Because if I play queen f3, king e7, I can't get into f7 because of this rook. That's why in this position, I'm going to play h4 first, threatening h5. To try to steer the black rook from f8 to h8. I want it to leave control of the f-file. With this push, h4, we're threatening h5. If black plays, for example, f5, we play h5. Where does the king go? He is forced to go to h6, facing the bishop, and as we know, knight takes e6, for example, with an attack on the king and the knight attacking the queen. Or knight f7, that's also very effective. So after this push to h4, black will often play rook h8. Because if I push, they can capture. But now I play queen d3 h6, f5 en passant, king takes. And now that the rook is no longer on f8, we play queen f3. King e7, we go to f7. He is forced to come to d6, and now you have several possible mates with the knights. Knight g5 to e4, that's checkmate. Or the other knight to e4, that's checkmate. Or knight b5, that's also checkmate. So let's look at another game, a real game that was played between two Swiss players, and the game starts with the move e4. We saw that I managed to pull off the Greek gift attack a lot with the d4 pawn. But with the pawn d4, you'll see it's sometimes possible as well. e6, d4, d5, knight c3. It has been played. So black plays the French defense. Knight f6, the pin, bishop e7. The best option for white is certainly to push forward on e5. Chase away the knight and exchange the bishops on the black square. Because the black squared bishop, for black, it's their best bishop. You see, for example, after e5, the knight moves, and we take the dark squared bishop. The bishop c8, that's the light squared bishop, is blocked in the position. So taking away their dark squared bishop is, in the end, taking away their best bishop. But in this position, the Swiss player had another idea. He took the knight on f6, bishop takes, and now he played e5. The bishop comes to e7, bishop to d3. Already you can see there's the pawn on e5 and the bishop on d3. All that's missing is the knight on f3, and for black to perform kingside castling. And even in this position, you can't play the Greek gift sacrifice. Because if the opponent does kingside castling and we play knight to f3, when we try to sacrifice, the king will take. And after knight to g5, the bishop will take. But you'll see that in the game, the black bishop will leave its watch over knight to g5. Black plays c5. Capture on c5, the bishop recaptures. And this time, there is a lack of control over knight to g5, but the queen still controls, since white no longer has a dark squared bishop. Queen to g4 is played to attack the g7 pawn. Kingside castling. Knight to f3, knight to c6. Black wasn't careful, and now the Greek gift can be executed. Since we have the bishop taking on h7, the knight can come to g5 without the queen being able to eliminate the knight. But first we play queen h5, so the king can't escape, he's forced to go back. And now, knight g5. Rook to e8. Here, remember, you shouldn't go to h7 right away. First, you need to take on f7 to make the black king go for a little ride. And then we'll be able to force checkmate. We saw that this Greek gift happened in a Queen's Gambit, which was my opening, then later in a French defense. And now I'm going to show you that it can even happen in a Sicilian, or actually in other openings as well. But what's interesting about this Sicilian is that it's actually two very strong players facing each other. The player with white is Vlastimil Hort, a very well-known German player, and his opponent is Ivan Radulov, a strong Bulgarian player. So let's take a look. a4. c5, knight f3, knight c6, the d4 push. So here there's an exchange. nf6 attacks the pawn, it's defended. d6, bg5, e6, queen d2 preparing for queenside castling, be7, queenside castling, kingside castling, and f4. This push to f4 is soon preparing the e5 advance. You know, this e5 push is necessary, then you take again to drive away the knight. But for now, the black knight is also defending the e5 square, and we don't have the bishop on d3 yet, except that black plays d5 here. So this allows us to immediately counter-push with e5, attacking the knight that comes to d7. The bishops are offered for exchange. Bishop takes, queen takes, and the knight comes to f3. What we're missing to realize the Greek case is the presence of the bishop on d3. It's the presence of the bishop on d3. Black plays a 6, bishop d3. Black plays b5. Here we are still missing something, because if we do bishop takes check, king takes, knight g5 check, the problem is the queen that doesn't follow. So here, Vlastimil Hort is going to play queen e3 with the idea of playing bishop takes, king takes, knight g5. Check. And so the queen can arrive on the h file at h3. Black doesn't suspect anything, rook b8. Then that's what happens. Bishop takes, king takes, knight g5. If the king goes to g8, then queen h3 will provoke checkmate. And even if the rook moves away, you can't take on f7 this time. But the black queen blocks the king's escape route. So you can play queen h7, king f8, and queen h8 checkmate. After knight g5 check, the king went to g6. But queen h3. And since the rooks are not connected, black can't play rook h8 here. So what's the threat? Queen h7, checkmate. And to avoid checkmate, black would have to sacrifice their queen and have a totally losing position afterwards. So the theoretical conditions to carry out this Greek gift attack are the presence of a pawn on a5 to drive away the black defensive knight from the king side, and the light squared bishop to sacrifice itself on h7. Once the knight is no longer there, a knight on f3 that can come to g5 without being taken to give check, and a queen that can come to collaborate with the knight in the checkmate attack. Well, I hope that this time you have mastered the Greek gift attack and that you'll be able to use it yourself. You can leave me likes, comments, share the video, and of course support the channel. Goodbye everyone.